A little bit about my background, so you know where I'm coming from. My grandfather told me that people came from all over the world and brought ideas to this country. You know, every country. And he said that, I think if you pledge allegiance to the earth and everyone on it, that'd be the way to go for the future. If you pledge allegiance to one country, you're kind of cutting yourself off. So I think all of us have relatives that have come from different countries, okay? So if you say, like the big dumb Swede, get a big dumb Swede or dumb Polak to clean out your cellar, or a drunken Irishman, you know, or a chiseling Jew, or a goddamn wop. There's a goddamn everybody in this world, you know? And the world you live in, you know how women are, and women say, well, you know how men are. Well, they aren't in any special way. It depends on where they're brought up. So when I was a kid, I want to know what men and women would be like if they weren't too contaminated by civilization. Okay? You can take all the pictures you want. And so I worked my way on a boat to Hawaii and then to the Solomon Islands and then to Tahiti. But the Chinese already owned all the businesses there. They had business set up, stores, and that was already contaminated. So I found some out islands called the Tuamotu chain. This is 65 years ago. When I got there, everybody walked around nude. It was normal to that culture. And I never saw a male stare at a female body. Can you understand that? It was in trouble. They were swimming nude ever since they were that high. They look at the girl's eyes when they talk to her. Never the body. Never, hey, get a load of that shit. That's learned in this culture. Every book written in this culture is culture bound. It has nothing to do with reality. It's where this culture is. So what I'm going to try to tell you is that 90% of what you've been brought up to believe in is strictly bullshit. Okay? Okay. Now, when I was on the islands, I brought mirrors and beads to placate the island. I was going to give them to the natives to show I come as a friend, not to take anything away from them. But they were already in my thatched hut after I built it, giving out my mirrors and beads to one another without my permission. And I was a little confused, you know. So I said, well, what's going on here? And they said, you have too many. I really did. But I really didn't understand it because I was a jerk brought up in a civilized country. But about 3 days later, I did understand it. The men and women, the older men, were pulling in nets full of fish, and they threw fish to anyone standing there. Not you owe me a buck, you owe me $3. They just threw fish. And coconuts were so available, and bananas, that nobody sold anything. They just gave you things. Does that make sense? Right. Then the missionaries came. They set up a tent. Those of you that are religious might be shocked. They set up a tent, and they told the girls to wear T-shirts when they came to church. And the girls had no idea why. It's like me covering your nose, because you don't expose your nose. It's the same world. So anyway, the girls brought out the T-shirts. They brought them from the States. They had them with them. And they gave them to the girls, not to the men. You know. And the girls got 2 holes in the T-shirts. They weren't comfortable. Okay? And the missionaries were confused. The missionaries have a fixed point of view. They create God, man creates God in his own image. Not just the opposite, what you read in the Bible. And God is more like man than God. God gets pissed off, angry, creates floods, disease, all this. And then if you don't follow his teachings, you burn eternally. That's not God, that's a psychopath. If you're religious, you're going to be hurt. You can leave now if you want to. Because all religion is low-grade stuff. Terrible stuff. You know, Noah's Ark would have to be a mile long. What would you do with all the shit of all the animals? You know, flies galore in there. Where did he get the polar bear from? The stories are so ridiculous that Moses raised his wand and parted the Red Sea. God could have put the Jews on the other side without parting the Red Sea. You know, all the stories are awful. Now, as I understand, if you have children, most of you anyway, would try to make them smarter and better than you are in every way you are able to. And if they got too smart, they'd leave you.
That's what's supposed to happen. We're supposed to prepare.
Like most of you, or some of you, may have left your parents because they lived in the past. Okay? I'm not against anybody, I'm just telling you the way it is. So anyway, after I was on the island a while, I asked the natives if they would help me build an outrigger canoe. I know how to build one better than they do, but I wanted to establish, you know, I come as like one of you. And they got in a huddle and didn't say a thing, and they left. About a week later, they brought a canoe over and they put it down from my thatched hut. They just said, "It's for you, for your use." So I said, "Well, what do you want? Do you want me to do anything for you?" No, they didn't know what that meant. What do you want? I brought that with me from where I came, you know. And they didn't want anything. Anyway, it appears about a week and a half later, I heard some rustling outside my thatched hut, and I looked out, and they were sneaking off with a canoe that they gave me. I didn't understand that, so I stepped out and I said, "What's going on?" I said, "You no use." It's true, I didn't use it. So they took it back. Of course, I was a little confused, but I got to understand all that later. And they were sane in many ways, saner than we are. And I wanted you to understand that people reflect their culture. Did anything I say bother you up to now? Okay. So I was talking about my experience with different people raised in the South Pacific. They were brought up in a world where they were very different, and they wore no clothing at all. This was 65 years ago. I don't know about today. But anyway, they wore no clothes, and I never saw a male stare at a female body that was brought up there. They were swimming nude ever since they were this high. So they had no curiosity or anything. But if you covered the nose of a female, I can assure you, if you showed a male half your nose, he would have to loosen his collar. If you were brought up in that kind of culture, you understand? So everything that we think with and think about is pumped into your head ever since you're this high. You're an American citizen. You're a Catholic. You're a Lutheran. Pumped into your head. Who loves you more than anybody? I don't know, Mommy. Your Mommy and Daddy. They pump that in your head. What's the greatest country in the world? This country. That happens to all people all over the world. They're all fucked up. So I'm not using the term normal people. I mean fucked up. I mean they're vanished. By the way, there's no bad language. Because if you bake a pie, I don't know, and you drop it, you might say fiddly-dee. He might say shit. That means I'm sorry I dropped the pie. Nothing to do with fecal matter. You know what I mean? So there are no bad words. It's just the way you're brought up. Okay? In the army, if a guy borrows some money from another guy, he says, "I can't pay you this Saturday." He says, fuck it. Pay me when you can. Well, fuck you means I don't agree with you sometimes. It depends on how it's used. It's one word that can mean many things. Bullshit means I can't accept what you're saying. So there's no bad language. When a person says, "Well, that's not a nice way to talk." Well, what is a nice way to talk? Even scientists are full of shit. You wouldn't expect that of me. But I'm telling you they are, as long as they work for every separate country. If they work on nuclear weapons, bombers, our universities are better equipped than ever. They have the best microscopes, the best weighing devices, and the wars are getting worse. The bombs are getting worse. Nuclear is getting worse. The cobalt bomb, there's a flicker bomb, it's a bright light, goes on and off. It's out in space, and it gives people epileptic seizure by light going on and off real fast. So we're not civilized yet. As long as there's war, police, prisons, crime, we're not civilized. As long as we spend most of our money on weapon systems. Even war, all wars are corrupt. Let me give you an example. If they take your life, or they ask you to put up your life to defend this country, and say he does, I think if he does that, and all the volunteers do that, we should conscript all the war industries so no one makes a buck out of war. No one sells airplanes for $1 million a piece with all kinds of sensors on it, submarines, aircraft carriers. War is big business. It always had been. It always made a lot of money. Am I bothering anybody? Total conscription, men, machines, material, and money for the duration. After the war, give it back. They say, buy war bonds, that brings Johnny home faster. Why wait for him to buy war bonds? Take his fucking money and bring the boys home. You take their lives, don't you understand that? So if you want to talk to soldiers, if there are any here, are there any soldiers here?
Marines.
Marines. Okay. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
Does it bother you?
No.
Oh, no.
So when you talk to Marines, are you still in the service?
No.
Good.
Me and him were
Talk to
together.
Marines against the war. Talk to them about total conscription.
Oh, yeah.
Not that the Army is full of shit, although it is.
Oh, yeah. I don't think anybody else is more full of shit than them.
Okay. You guys are amazing. Maybe that's why you're here. Anyway, it's harder to get to normal people. Normal means under the influence of propaganda. All newspapers, all television stations sell time. They're businesses. They don't have guys like me on the air because that disrupts their business. You understand that? So, although in foreign countries, they invited us to China, Dubai, we've been there. We've been to Dubai, and they wanted me to design a new city there, and the tallest building in the world, and a lot of other things. So I said, I want to look around first and see what you're doing. Well, they laid out the red carpet, gave flowers to Roxanne, brought the 40-foot limousine over to us at the airport, picked us up, showed us around, fed us well. And then they asked a question. What do you think of our society? I went like that. It's not going anywhere. They said, well, we're building cities in the sea, not cities, they're islands, artificial islands, Palm Island. You know about that?
Yeah.
And it's for tourists mainly. And they sold most of the houses on the island for $1 million. So the sales were so great they put houses in between. And then now they're being sued because they're making a slum of it. They're filling it up. Anyway, they said to me, what do you think? I said, it's not going to go anywhere if you depend on tourists. Because the tourists will stop flocking there as soon as the economic system goes, which is a short time from now. Well, they disagreed with that. I said, bringing architects there and engineers and putting up every building a different size, like New York, is chaos. But if you're brought up in New York, you might even sing, New York, New York. I love it. If you're brought up in Chile or any place, you love it, no matter where you're brought up. So the problems are, what is a useful direction for society to take? Well, this is a direction I'm going to point out. If enough people like the Venus Project, what the Venus Project hopes to do is declare all of the world's resources as the common heritage of all the world's people. The Earth and all its resources. No more separate nations. So anyone can go anywhere. Before the states joined together, they used to stake out their territory. They used to fight. They had militias. They would fight. This is our territory. Oh no, you're intruding. When all the states joined together, the government worked out the lines of the states, and they agreed, and that was the end of territorial disputes. If you want the end of war, you must declare the earth common heritage. If few nations control most of the earth's resources, I don't care how many treaties you sign, how many laws you make, there will be war. Do you understand that? Okay. By the way, since you're new here, if you disagree with anything, interrupt me. Interrupt me if you disagree or don't quite understand it. It's perfectly all right. If you don't do that, I consider you impolite. It's polite to interrupt me if you don't understand it. Okay. So, not only that, but you must take away all the artificial boundaries made by people. And you must grow food without artificial coloring, flavoring. You can't accelerate animal growth by giving hormone shots, because if they speed cell multiplication and a chicken grows faster and a cow grows faster, those fast cells are bad for humans. So they know that cancer is on the increase. And so cigarettes are cancer sticks, whether you smoke or not. And why do they allow it? Because the government makes a lot of money on cigarettes, a lot of money on whiskey, beer, all that crap. Okay? And a lot of money on drugs, drug business. Now, there used to be a book, which I'm sure most of you never heard of, 100 Million Guinea Pigs. If you heard of it, raise your hand. 1, 2.
Because of you.
That book pointed out the drug companies, what they're doing. Why don't they find out natural ways of healing people, like celery juice cuts down on high blood pressure, but there's no money in it. A pill you can get $2 for. So the monetary system is basically corrupt. You can pay people off, senators, governors, make money. As long as they make money at it, you're never going to get the truth.
Viagra, for instance, was developed for pulmonary hypertension, but when they found out it had a certain side effect, they forgot all about the people with pulmonary hypertension and marketed it for fun.
Yes, well, I understand that. Okay. From my point of view, people always ask me, what are you going to do with the criminals? Here's my answer. Every time you go to a supermarket and buy a box of Wheaties or anything, open that box, it's way down in the box. What do you mean by criminal? A lawyer would be considered a criminal in the future. The Supreme Court judges would be arrested as criminals, all of them, because they don't go into the background of a person. What made them that way? If you're brought up in the South, you're going to say, I'm going to give me a goddamn nigger, I'll go and kick his ass. Where do you get that from? The South. You get that from the subgroup you're brought up with. You're not born that way. You're not born with bigotry and prejudice. You learn it. It's so automatic you don't even feel it. Goddamn Swede. A dumb Swede. So you got all that you learn in your environment. And when girls say, well, you know how men are, men take you out on a date 3 or 4 times or sooner, then they try to get in your blouse, you say it's getting laid, I hardly know the same old shit. They all behave the same way. Men like to fuck because they can get rewarded for it. There are other guys that say, how many women did you screw this month? He says, 10. He's not looked upon bad. He's looked upon as Don Juan. The more women you screw, the greater you are. Women, if they screw around with 2 guys, they're tramps. Who wrote the book? The men. They're full of shit, too. It's full of shit. It's your motion pictures, your radio stations, your TV shows, all your movies are bullshit. They give you no information. Disney World is a place of entertainment. Disney World, a World's Fair on the future would make people smarter. They go in a certain way and come out much brighter. Do you understand what I'm getting at? I'm talking this way because I really care about people. I really would like to see them advance. Let me tell you what I mean by advance. Children's rooms would have small furniture. The toilet bowl, everything would be small. It's wrong to bring up children in a house of giants. It really is. And the furniture should grow with the children. And the children should be brought up by parents who go to school first to learn how to raise children. They don't know how. They just have a lot of kids. A guy comes up to me, I have 8 kids. I say, what are they for? That question, what are they for? This is what we don't know, what they don't give us in school. We don't know how to live, how to relate to one another, how to share values, and how to disagree without getting angry. This is what's missing, and that's everything. Your schools are all bullshit. All your universities are managed. All news is managed news. It's released in terms of the values they want you to have. When I speak at a university, I don't pull my punches. I speak, for example, they invited us to Iceland. When I got there, they gave me 8 minutes. I couldn't do anything in 8 minutes. They invited me to, China. When we got to China, they said I would speak to 1,500 students, science students, at their schools. But that never came off, because the guy that invited us there gave us return tickets, but he didn't give anybody else return tickets. And he ran away with the money. And they caught him in Las Vegas with a suitcase full of money. Sent them back to China. I don't know what happened. But anyway, nothing happened in China. Then they invited us to Dubai, which I told you about, and they wanted us to design new cities, new buildings. And I said, why? They said, well, we wanted to be the top makers of the tallest building in the world. I said, why? They're like children. They're little tiny children. And I said, your system's not going to work. Everybody gets off at 4 o'clock, and the freeways in Dubai are jammed. If you stagger the calendar, so 1/7 of the population's off every day, your beaches are never jammed. You go to Key Biscayne, those of you that do, they have to build new freeways. It's so jammed. Weekends. But during the week, it's not. So if you stagger the calendar, you don't have that problem. There are over 2 million cars sit still for 8 hours a day in America while you're at work. So if you had automobiles that were for public use, I can see on top of that cabinet what automobiles would look like. They have impact sensors on them, so when they're 30 feet away at a given speed, the brakes go on. If you got mad at me, you couldn't even drive your car into my car. They're the same thing that makes a light go on when you walk up to your house. Proximity unit. There need not be any automobile accidents. If you know where Radio City is, the Empire State Building, they take 1 million people up and down. They never crash. The elevators never crash. You see, you have to take my word for when a lot of you don't remember. There was a time when human beings used to operate elevators. Used to turn the crank. They never quite got to the floor. They had to walk it up and down. And today the elevator tells you not only step back, if the door hits you, it backs off you. So technology is what made us different and made us, put us ahead of many other people. It's not politics. Politicians offer nothing. They're businessmen and lawyers. They don't even know how to solve problems. So I want to give you an example of problem solving so you'll understand what I mean. Would you... if I can find, get me that conical shaped building up there on top shelf. Yeah, thank you.
This one?
Yeah, that one, the cone. Thank you very much. What happens when the government finds there's going to be a bad hurricane? They tell you to leave your house because it's going to be dangerous. So I've stopped the cars and say, where are you going? I don't know, but I'm going. If the government built this, no hurricane can pick up an inverted cone. The air will whirl around it, but it can't lift the roof off. Do you understand that? The windows are like airplane windows. Airplanes travel 600 miles an hour, so you need to worry about the wind. Then there's a turbine. That is a unit that's blown around by the wind. That keeps all the food in the refrigerator going, and it keeps the lights going. But if you get a hurricane, you might get a power outage for a week. All the food spoils and all the refrigerators. Do you understand what I'm saying? This. If we made these all through Florida, and use it during the week for recreation or public meetings or anything you want. This is what I mean by what do you do about it. It's not enough to criticize a country without offering a possible alternative. There are beds that come down all around here. There's food for so many hundred people, and you have them all through the West Indies, wherever there are tornadoes. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Not the government says you'll have to leave. Where the hell do they go? Now, there's an airplane there, black. If you mind, you don't mind, on the bottom shelf. Thank you very much. Is there anybody that never flew in an airliner? Okay, thank you. When you fly in an airliner, they tell you that under your seat is an inflatable unit. It's a life raft. You take it out, you put it on, and you try to get out of the airplane. Assuming you get out, if it's in the North Sea, you live about 12 minutes in the water. Okay? When I worked for Northrop, I showed him this. This is 60 years ago. He said, too far out. Anyway, the passenger section disengages. You know what I mean? If you land in the water, it can disengage and float. And there's food and everything in there, and nothing that'll burn. If you're coming in for landing, say the landing gear doesn't come down. This thing doesn't come down. The minute that happens, all the fuel is blown out automatically. Reason people are not killed in most crashes. They're killed by fire. Do you understand that? So pilot doesn't have to turn a switch. Fuel is blown out first by inert gas, like CO2. Once you blow the fuel out, you glide in, just like this space shuttle. You glide in. Now the airplane has other factors. Sometimes the plane will land, and sometimes the brakes fail. That plane can plow into people, the hangars, buildings, everything. The minute the brake fails, that turns the arresting gear, comes up on the runway. Looks like a net on aircraft carriers, which I suggested years ago. When the net comes up, the plane can't overshoot the ship. That should be on all public runways. So everybody doesn't understand what I'm talking about. I don't mind repeating. It's a net that comes up, made of stainless steel, that stops the plane where it's at. But the airport is a separate institution. Eastern Airlines is a separate institution. So you have all these different businesses. Businesses to make as much money as they can with the least provisions they can give you. That's the purpose of business, profit. But let's say you're a good businesswoman, very kind. She has 500 women working for her, and she decides to build a playground on the ground for the children, the women that work there. She also helps people with insurance, medical care. I can tell you, no one will invest in your company.
Yeah, I wouldn't be a very... I would only be a good businesswoman in one sense.
Yeah.
In another sense,
Not
good at
You
all.
understand? They can't get investors. If you invest in advertising, new production method, they'll invest in your company. But if you have humanistic inclinations, you're not good for business. Do you understand that? If the doctors in the old days used to spend a lot of time with people, it would cost you $3 to get a doctor to visit you. Now, today, they want the doctors in big institutions to move you through 20 minutes, no more, right through. Or give you a pill. Come call me Wednesday, you know. Now, the doctors in the future will be in the middle of the city system. If you people will be kind enough to remove some of that stuff, I can see this in the future. I'm going to try to give you an idea how it works. You can put that back on the shelf. It seems that a long time ago, women in America, and England, and France marched to try to get public libraries. Men were not that interested. Anyway, they had rotten eggs thrown at them. The same thing. Everything new and novel always had resistance. This is the public library in this city. Now, the women fought for a public library, and the people that gave them opposition said, if you make books available to people, they won't buy books from bookstores. Anybody didn't hear that? It would interfere with the free enterprise system. But anyway, the women won out and they got the library in. People read a little bit and they bought more books than ever because they knew more. They wanted to know even more. So right here I would have a camera center where anybody can come in and check out any kind of camera for your use. It's there for your use. Here you can check out any kind of musical instrument. It's cheaper to give kids things than put them in jail. It costs $50,000 to keep a kid in jail a year. It doesn't come out any better. $75,000 for an adult. Privatization of prisons is big business. So the longer you keep them, the more you make. So you understand everything's available without a price tag, like the library. Everything, all the necessities of life, your home, everything is made available. The earth wasn't put here for the Greeks or the Swedes. It's here for all people. If you're religious, fine. But I'm not religious. I just say if we use the earth intelligently, we can all live better than Bill Gates. It's a hard thing to get through your head, so I'm going to try to prove it to you. The middle-class American today lives better than kings in the past. They have air conditioning in their car. No king ever had that. So if you turn science loose, meaning innovation, turn it loose. Don't try to dig up nickels and dimes for heart disease, to do medical research in stem cells. We give every lab whatever the hell they need. We do when war comes. We give you airplanes and bombs with machine guns and sensors and radar, everything. Men, soldiers, are killing machines. They're not taught anything else. They destroy. Now, the cost of World War II, I'm sure you've seen pictures of Germany bombed out and France and all that. That's a hell of a lot of destruction in trillions of dollars. If you use that war money of all the nations building armies, protecting their private territory, you could have housed everyone on earth, wiped out the slums, build hospitals all over the world, and give labs whatever the hell they need. That's what a resource-based economy is. Sure, there are people that think the free enterprise system is good, because they are the advantaged people within the system. But the average person is not. They're used by the system. Lawyers would disappear in the future. I'm sorry if you studied law. Businessmen would disappear. Bankers, advertising, gone. No parasitic industry, and all politics, gone. Now let me tell you what happens in this place. All politics. The second picture up there, the second to me, I'd point to it, yeah. Would you mind pointing to it? That's the government of the future. No people. Here's how it works. If you have a computerized system with image screens, and you have, say, 6 satellites around the Earth, you get a hologram. You can project a hologram of the Earth. That's a virtual image of the Earth. And you can see every hurricane, the temperature all over the world, and with infrared cameras for 3,000 miles out in space, when you take photographs of the Earth, plant diseases show up as red all over the Amazon, wherever plants are sick. So here you have a whole picture of what's going on Earth, not some politician's view. You'd have every hurricane, every climate all over, and you'd have a model in your home of that unit, small. And all you do is touch it, and it tells you what the depth of the ocean, the height of the mountains, the population, just by touching it. How many of you have ever seen that? I've got a model of it like that. Yeah, thank you, Rosie.
Welcome to the Touch the globe for information. The Pacific Ocean. United States. The Gulf of Aden.
Do the music.
Anyway, it'll give you the distance of every country, how many miles.
That's awesome.
How much time it takes to get there by air, everything.
Goodbye for now.
So if you want that home, that'd be terrific. But there's other things that you don't know about, most people anyway. Shape memory materials. How many of you know about it?
Say it again.
Shape memory.
Shape memory.
Okay. There are materials that remember today. They remember the shape you make them in. if you take a wire made of nickel and titanium, 50-50 percentage of that, equal. If you vary it, it responds differently. So if you take that wire and you spell out with the wire Jesus Christ, thank you, and you spell out Jesus Christ, and you straighten out the wire and put it on the table and use a hidden heater under the table, it'll go back to Jesus Christ. You can do the following. Now this is the wire. So you come up front, you want to see it.
Right, I
Do you have an
can plug
extension?
it in over here. somewhere.
Okay. This is nickel and titanium. It's taken as a wire and they wind it around a form. And they hold it in place by either ceramic or insulated clamps. Thank you. And they heat it to about 400 degrees Fahrenheit, let it cool, and it remembers that shape. So I don't know you got a camera, would you mind pulling that out way beyond its elastic limit? As far out as you can pull it. That's right, way out.
Give me one then, though. Yeah.
Now I'd like you to, okay, that's good enough. It's not like it was, so I will do this, I will twist it, but you do it. You twist it, bend it, do whatever you want, but don't let it get caught in itself. If it gets caught in itself, it will not return. So I want to show you how the memory works. Okay. I'm going to twist it too, because just pressing it is one thing, distorting it. Okay. Now it's going to return to its original shape, because it has a built-in memory. Nobody invented it. It was discovered accidentally. A metallurgist was mixing different metals together, nickel and titanium, in Sweden, and he then put it on a table near a heat lamp, and it went back to straight again. And he scratched his head. Nobody ever invented anything. I'm going to back it up too. Now here it is. You can all see it, and hot air will make it go back a little slower. I don't know what happened, but is the switch on that? It's not hot enough. Okay, well, okay? It's not a trick. People think I'm using reverse photography. But this is a metal with a memory. They now make a fabric with a memory. Most doctors don't even know about it. It's suture fabric to do stitching. And the doctor ties a surgical knot. Then he straightens it out, cuts the skin, sticks it through, and the heat of the body causes it to tie a surgical knot. Can you understand that? No? Is there anybody who doesn't understand this? All right. This only has one memory. But if you took, say, 3 inches of that wire and gave it one memory and then welded 40 of them together with 40 different memories, you can do fantastic things. So, I'm saying that if you made a dome building of the future with its new materials that we have, and we use strips of wire, it isn't only nickel and titanium, other metals have similar characteristics. And you spread that throughout the building and made a dome, then flatten it out. Ship 10,000 houses to India flat. When you get there, connect 2 electrodes. A minute and a half goes back to a full dome. That goes for furniture like that chair, red one back there, orange. If you made a furniture, compound curve, flatten them out, ship them out, you can get a lot of buildings on the boat as discs. So everybody doesn't understand? Anything I say that you don't get, interrupt me, because I don't mind telling you over again. So Jimmy Carter, with his hammer and nails, is not going to house anyone. He's either sort of jerk or very stupid or poorly informed as to what's new. Your senators and congressmen should be at the forefront of technology. They tell you to write your congressman. How the hell did he get the job? It's like writing the Harpo Marx. You know, they can't offer anything. They don't know anything. They don't know anything physical. So that, I don't care whether you're Democrat, Republican, Communist, Socialist, they don't know what to do. When Castro got into power, he cleared out all the hotels and all the gambling casinos that were owned by Americans. Most of the industries, the pineapple industries, the sugarcane, was owned by American businessmen. So he kicked them all out and he gave it back to the Cuban people. But thereafter he didn't know what to do. He wasn't technical. So I'd help any country, Haiti, Cuba, anybody. It doesn't make any difference. I went to Cuba to see if I can help them. And I said, I'd like to meet with Fidel Castro. I said, he's cutting the sugarcane, Mr. Fresco, with the working class. You know, one of the boys. So I went to the University of Havana, and they spoke to me in their accent. They said, Mr. Fresco, we don't have the technology you have in America, so we can't move. We cannot move too fast. I said, all you do is jack up a car and connect to the rear wheel a driving belt, and you can drive your sugarcane through it. Oh, you have to meet Fidel. Yeah, where is he? So the university was making all kinds of notes. Then I said, look at those men carrying the bananas down the hill. All you have to do is hang a clothesline up, hang the bananas on, and they'll come down bringing the boxes up automatically. You have to see Fidel. This is the way they spoke. They meant well, but they didn't know what to do. Their technicians, their engineering students are all brought up like our engineering students. They build warplanes, nuclear weapons. Even Einstein was a jerk in that area. He gave certain formulas, like Yuri, well, I will get to him later. But there were many people in science that worked on the atom bomb, the Manhattan Project, and they hoped, Einstein hoped they wouldn't use it. He hoped they would demonstrate it like 100 miles off the coast of Japan. Say, we have this terrible weapon, we'd rather not use it. And he believed they'd do that. So did Oppenheimer. He really believed they'd demonstrate it first. And when he told Truman, he was very disappointed. Truman says, I don't want that guy around anymore. Truman was an asshole. All your presidents were super stupid, all the way back to Washington. I'm sorry to say these things. I know you're brought up with the other bullshit. Okay. When you leave here and you get your package of films and videos, show them to other people. If you don't, nothing will happen. I can't make it happen. I have no power at all. Anyway, when they invited us to Turkey, I said, I have to have at least an hour and a half. They said, you got it. And when I had an hour and a half, NBC, CBN, every broadcasting they had came down and photographed the whole thing for hours and days. And then they said, Jacque, we'd like to start a Venus project in Turkey. If they gave me time to explain what it is, some people think it's some form of communism. Well, communism uses money, it has banks, it has social elitism, it has police, it has prisons, and it has people that don't know a damn thing about technology that run the show. So it has nothing in common with communism. Here's how it works. The Department of Agriculture is one of those units you see around the earth here. You know, any one of those units would be the Department of Agriculture. Its electrical tentacles go into the soil. If your water table drops, that pumps water out there. If the nutrients change, it pumps nutrients out there. You don't need a guy with a telephone saying, Mr. President, we're having a terrible drought out here. And the president says, how bad is it? He says, well, if it continues, thousands will be homeless and without food. So the president flies over. He says, so you do have a drought. So what? You don't want a guy to fly over. You don't want to write your congressman. What do you have to write your congressman for women's rights? When you fly in an airliner today, you don't have to write the pilot, say you've been flying at an angle for an hour and a half straight up. He knows his business. The guy says, you're going to Hawaii. You say, but there's icebergs out there. You're going the wrong direction. The guy says, gee, I never thought of that. The people flying airplanes know their navigation and they know how to fly. And the steward people that serve you know how to rig up the life rafts and everything, at least to the extent that they're trained. But politicians don't know anything. I mean that, nothing. You ask Obama, what do? He gives money to the people that created the problem in the first place. The banks and the private institutions. Is he a nice guy? He may be, I don't know, but he's not very bright. Because if you give money to the automobile companies, since they can't operate and compete with Japanese cars, let me see a blueprint of the car you intend to turn out. Does it get more miles per gallon than a Japanese car? Is it less expensive? Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sell it, even if you turn it out. So you don't have a government that knows what to do. Oh, by the way, this is the end of the economic system. It's going downhill. All these priming of the pump is not going to work. It's happening all over the world. That's why the Venus Project, people are listening to it. 50 million people know about the Venus Project now. And they're talking about it. And they're trying to build one in Australia. They said, we're going to build one cooperative community. And they didn't consult us. It's not going to work. As a kid, I read a book called 125 Utopias and Why They Failed. That's what you have to read first. You have to know why things don't work. If you put normal people in the city, it won't work. You have to go to an orientation center first. Don't let that scare you. Orientation means how it works. This is the distribution centers, the library. If you want a musical instrument, you go here. And you don't have to. That's the end of juvenile crime. It's the end of most crime. If people have access to the necessities of life, they don't steal. Let me describe that. There's a place in Jamaica called Ochos Rios, where 8 rivers come together, beautiful water down in the mountains. And nobody ever comes at night and fills a canteen and steals it. There's so much water there, they don't even think about it. The air you breathe is so valuable, you can't live without it. But there's so much of it, no one can privatize it. And today you have to pay a buck for a glass of water. It comes in a bottle which semi-contaminates it. Plastic. So anyway, you don't live in a society that can go anywhere. Now, this is for those that were in the Army. I don't know if you know this. The U.S. Army dumped 65 tons of nerve gas off the coast of Miami. How many knew about that? About 40 years ago.
I heard you say it in one of the videos.
That's it. How can you be in the Army and love this country and dump nerve gas into the ocean? The Army is made up of obedient people. They do anything they're told to do. They don't, never taught to think in any of our schools. In fact, man cannot think or reason. That's another bullshit thing. I'm going to try to prove it to you, okay? If I fail, you have to let me know, okay? In our schools today, as far as I know, they do something like this. They say, this is how we spell cat. Children, you know. And the kid comes back with something like this. And the teacher says, that's wrong. Those words tell you nothing. That's wrong. Think about it. They don't tell you anything. Well, you should spell it that way. It doesn't tell you anything either. That's not what I told you. That doesn't tell you anything either. So the kid says to me, what is it? And I say, well, instead of this K, I say to the kid, you're very close. You're very close. But we just changed this character to this. Don't say you're wrong, because you say you're wrong, it creates a storm, bad feeling in the kid. He doesn't know what's wrong, you know, and so Though that kind of language, don't forget, our language was designed thousands of years ago in England, and it was never very good. And the language is not good for communication. We usually talk at each other rather than to one another. Is there anyone who doesn't understand what I'm saying? We talk at each other. You know, people meet each other. How's the family? Very good. How are you? Very good. But if you say, I'm not too good, I need $3,000 for an operation. Can you let me have it? I said, no. Then why do you ask me how I am? What is all this bullshit? And on weekends, they say, have a nice weekend. Why not have a nice life? Or just a weekend? See, people talk automatically at each other. They don't talk to each other because they're never taught how to talk to each other. When girls talk to girls, when guys talk to girls, I'm always amazed. Hey, you're cute. I like your dimple. Nobody talks to me that way. Oh, guy, Jacque Fresco, I like your dimple when you smile. Your eyes, you're so soft and warm. What is that bullshit for? Softening up operations. I want to get laid. No other reason. Otherwise associate with men. Because men have more in common with one another. If you don't understand me, if you put 10 men and 10 women in a room, they'll mix. After they're married, say 3 years, put them in a room, the women go to the room. Men don't give a shit about fancy lipstick. Or they don't care about pictures of your kids or anything like that. They really don't care. So people never learn that. They're always polite. Polite means swallow it. Okay? And when and if the Venus Project comes in, the divorce rate will soar. Because a lot of people are trapped. They got kids, they got guys working, how will I live if I leave? So they live a miserable life. So the divorce, in the future, people will not marry. Nobody has the right to pronounce you man and wife. Who the hell is he? Some guy with a white collar says, I pronounce you man and wife? Where the hell did that come from?
Powerless.
And so if you don't get one, then the guy said, that'll cost you $3,000 to split up. He said, well, I haven't got it.
Then you go home.
You have a very predatory culture. If he bangs into my car, he makes money straightening out the dents. If I get a root canal problem, he makes $1,500 working on my dent. If everybody is a predator, they all make money out of all human misery. You got cancer, it's just going to break you. You understand that? I don't care how much money you got in the bank, it can wipe you out. So the whole world become one gigantic business institution. As long as there's banks and money, you'll always have corruption. Now, we do sign treaties with other nations, but if that treaty doesn't serve our interest, we violate it. You can look it up. Don't take my word for it. Treaties are violated by the thousands. Now, some asshole said, say no to drugs. Now, that doesn't stop anything. You don't say no to drugs. Let's say it's like taking a Southern and say, stop speaking with a Southern accent. You know, you can. And that person that's brought up in a given country, you say, thinks a certain way, the way they wanted you to think. That's what they bring you up. They bring you up to sing America the Beautiful, all those Pledge Allegiance to the flag. So when I was about 13 or 14, I refused to pledge allegiance to the flag. The teacher did not ask me any questions, grabbed me by the ear right to the principal's office. And the principal said to the teacher, you're excused. And he said to me, he put his arm around me. He said, why don't you want to pledge allegiance? Everybody does. I said, everybody wants to believe the earth was flat. That doesn't make it flat. So he said, well, what do you think of American history? Strictly BS, bad science. So he said, what do you mean? Everybody in the history books does the right thing. They always have the right thing to say, they look right, they behave correctly, all through the years, never make any mistakes, never apologize for anything. I said, there's no such people as I read about in history books. Besides, all history is written. If the Germans won the war, they've shown pictures of chain gangs in America, you know, all the things that you don't know about, all the corruption you don't know about. And if we win, if the Japanese won the war, you have another movie, another history book that's different. So people say to me, what do you really like? I say, you ask 20 different people, you get 20 different images. I can't write an autobiography on myself because I would be biased in terms of my own background. Anyway, he didn't disagree with me. Well, my mother came in weeping and she said, what did he do? He didn't do anything, the principal said. We have no place for him in our school. She says, oh my God, you mean he's going to be kicked out of school? The principal said, no, I'm going to take him to a bookstore and buy the books he wants to read. He doesn't like crap he's been given when he was a kid, like Dickie Dare and the sheep, I don't know if any had. On the way, he met a cow, moo said the cow. Kids, Jack and the Beanstalk and Cinderella, touches a rat, becomes a white horse. You fill their heads with crap first, then you say, now sing, we are free. Anyway, they're all controlled. And anyway, it's a bad control, it's terrible. So what happened, the principal did, he took me to Macy's and bought me books I wanted. And the books I wanted was Mind in the Making by James Harvey Robinson, old book. And it's how we get to be the way we are. I didn't want the school books, they didn't tell me anything. They just told me about history, which was a batch of lies. And all the reasons for us going to war, a batch of lies, propaganda. And the language we learned was an old language, which you couldn't talk much about things. And there was a language I read as a kid called Language and Thought and Action by Hayakawa. How many have ever heard of it? Science and Sanity by Alfred Korzybski. Tyranny of Words by Stuart Chase. They're all on our website. You can get those books. I think you can.
I'm going through your book list and reading them. I'm just on why people believe weird things.
Are you getting anything out of it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Michael Sherman's Why People Believe Weird Things. That's what I'm reading right now.
Good. Now, most of those books are not available. There's a society in America called the Heritage Foundation. And they believe they're good citizens, and they go through the library and take out books, have books removed by government pressure, or local pressure that they feel might be disturbing. You don't like that?
No, it's
terrible. I think.
Definitely.
Now, the book called 100 Million Guinea Pigs Exposed the Drug Industry. And the public, it was a bestseller in America years ago. And the public demanded that we build an organization in Washington called the Pure Food and Drug Administration. They will investigate all drugs to make sure they're okay. Now it's peopled by the people of the drug industry. Do you understand that? That always happens. Okay? Now the Air Force or the Pentagon in Washington, they say they're there to prevent our country from being attacked. They're there to defend our country. Well, we gave them radar and everything in Hawaii. And the soldiers detected the enemy planes coming over. The GIs with their radar. They took it to a captain and said, we detect a flight of planes coming toward Hawaii. The captain says, probably our planes. Just during the hostile times. And then they overlooked that. So the radar served no purpose. Then they thought of building a defense system in Canada, the Dune Line they called it, where the Russian planes, if they came over, we'd have stuff over there. Well, if you had stuff over there, I can assure you the Russians wouldn't come over that way. You know, military thinking is based upon your kind of training you get. So the Arabs didn't have access to weapons, so they hijacked a plane. And they flew into the Trade Center. Does anybody ever know why North Korea and China are building armies and nuclear weapons? Does anybody know why? If you don't mind, there's a headline, Roxanne, will you get it for me? That you've never seen, and most Americans haven't seen it. We ran this in England, this headline. Thank you, Roxanne. If you can't see it, I'll pass it around. It says, would you mind somebody read that out loud?
The U.S. plans for first strike nuclear attacks against 7 countries.
And it names them. North Korea, China, it names them. What do you expect them to do?
Defend themselves.
How many of you knew this? Will you show me your hand? How many of you knew this headline? You knew it? Where did you find out?
I live in Australia. We have things like that in Australia as well.
He said he lives in
Australia.
Australia. Jack's hard of hearing.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so this is why they're doing it. Now, how can we build so much hatred in the people that they fly planes into a village? We've never heard their side of the story. I'm not pro their side of the story. I'm against all separate nations. But they all lie, all of them. And they all, the Pentagon released that. Even if you intended the bomb, and don't release that. That's another dumb thing they did. So everything that happens, there's a book called The Secrets of Pearl Harbor. The foreword is written by Admiral Halsey, well known, liked by everyone. How we got the Japanese to attack Pearl Harbor. That's what that book's about. I can't even find it. You might find it on the internet. The internet is the last straw. It's the greatest liberator of human beings ever invented. But they love to control it. If you ever gain control of the internet, you can kiss your ass goodbye. So, I want to say that children are so warped by this culture. And I want to give you another example of that, but I want to get back to the principal. He got me these books, and he roped off the back of the class, and I was able to read that. But I was beaten up by the other students, not all of them, some of them, because they resented that privilege. But that went on for a year and a half, and he died. And they cut out that privilege. So I played hooky for 6 weeks. But when I came home one day, I looked like I was going to school. I came running out with the books, but I never went to school. And the tour officer is sitting on my doorstep. He's the guy that makes sure kids go to school. So I said, Jacque, you haven't been to school for a month. I said, 6 weeks. He said, that's right. He said, what do you do when you're not in school? I said, I go to the science museum, I go to the library and read what I want to read. He said, what do you do at home? I said, I have a little lab. He says, can I see it? I said, under condition you don't tell my mother who you are. He agreed. He saw the lab and what I was doing he found interesting. He said, I can't tell you what to do as long as you're not hanging out in gangs and doing awful things in his face. He says, I can't tell you what to do, but you can do me a favor. I would appreciate it if you show up Monday, then you can play hooky from then on, as long as I've done my job. So, of course, I showed up Monday. From then on, I never went back to school. Because airplanes dropped pamphlets just during the Depression. In my lab, I showed up, played hooky because airplanes dropped pamphlets and said, come to California, there's lots of jobs. That's why I went to California. And I hitchhiked. But before that, every 15 million people were sleeping in every empty lot because the banks failed. They failed and people bought homes and cars, but they couldn't pay them off. So the banks said, you're 3 weeks and you're out if you don't pay. So they were kicked out and they built shacks all over America. 15 million people in my area alone were kicked out of their houses. And there were bread lines and soup kitchens and all that. And I looked around, the stores had everything in the windows. Vacuum cleaners, radios. It's just that the public didn't have purchasing power. They had it, but the banks failed, so they couldn't get it. And then I hitchhiked to Washington, because the people were sleeping all over it. But in Washington, there was a larger group of people. They were war veterans of World War I. Thousands of them came with crutches, wheelchairs, and were sleeping all around the Capitol, every empty lot. And they said, we want our pension. The government promised them $600 when they got out of the Army so they can start life anew. But the government didn't have any money, so the government gave them an IOU. He said, I can't pay my rent or buy food with it. So they were all over the Capitol, and it looked very bad. So they got the Army to get them out of there. So the Army called and said, you guys have to leave. They said, no, we're not leaving till we get our $600 that the government promised us. So that was Douglas MacArthur. He was a captain. He threw tear gas at them and got them out of there. I just want you to know this. It's not in your history books. It should be, because there were thousands of soldiers involved. Do you understand? They don't care about people. Obviously, the government doesn't really care. Otherwise, they wouldn't outsource. Industry, American industry, would not outsource to China because just cheap labor. They would keep Americans working. But if they kept Americans working, we would lose the competitive edge. You understand? You wouldn't be able to exist. Either way. So, I'm trying to tell you they don't care about people. That's why they outsource. So, if they don't care about people, what are you fighting for? Okay. Now, we don't go to another country to bring democracy. It's because they have oil or they have something we need. Do you understand that? We don't go to bring democracy because we never had a democracy. I want to tell you what a democracy would be like. If you disagree, let me know. Our president would get up and criticize any country for an hour and a half or as long as he wants to. When he's finished, I said, is there anything else you want to add to that? He says, no, that's my criticism of China. Then I invite the Prime Minister of China to come on the air for an hour and a half and give his point of view. Then I invite the Prime Minister of Sweden. He says, they're both full of shit. This is how I see it. That's a democracy. But when you got religion on Saturday and Sunday only, not different religions, Christian religion mostly, you have to have a comparative religion, what all people believe and what some people don't believe. Agnostics, atheists, everybody. That's a democracy. Do you understand that? You've never had a democracy. If mothers don't know how to feed their kids nutritional food, if you're brought up in a house that was painted with Dutch boy white lead, that damages the brain. So when you bring your kid to school, he's not equal to other kids. In our school books it says all people are born equal. They're not. Some are tall, some are thin, some are wide, some have better eyesight, some have better hearing. They're not born equal. They're different. I'm not advocating this. I'm telling you like it is. So what we would do in the future is examine children in many different areas. If you live in a house where mother and dad fight all the time, finally to get a divorce, you might go, boy, I'm never getting married. From your background, that appears to be correct. Do you understand me? So if a kid comes from such an insecure background, and if his mother, say, yaks at him all the time, you leave all your things around, your brother puts things back. What's the matter with you? Can't you clean up? I'm picking up after you all the time. That kid stops listening to verbal behavior. Then you bring the kid to school at 6, the teacher starts talking, he looks out the window. He's not interested in verbal behavior because it was unpleasant. Tyranny of words will help you do some of that. So, kids don't go to school as equal. They're not fed right. Like if a kid from an impoverished family says, hey, Daddy, we'll keep the moon up there. He says, well, I know about that. He says, I don't see no rope holding the moon up there. The dad can't further that. You might say, let's look it up in the encyclopedia. So you give your kid a head start. So when you bring kids to school, they come from different environments where love isn't a manifest thing. Not all children are loved and treated well by their parents. Now, I want to get on that bullshit word again, love. Another bullshit word, which everybody is looking for. Nobody ever really finds it. Now, I want to tell you something about love. How many of you like everything you've ever done in your life? Okay. So if you live with a replica of yourself, how long will you be together? Think about that. Okay? And anybody don't understand what I'm getting at?
Actually, yeah, you did understand that. You said if you live with a replica of yourself, how long would you be?
If you live with a replica of yourself, how long will you be together?
Because you don't like everything that you yourself do in life.
I would have dumped myself a while ago.
What I'm saying that sometimes you like yourself, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. Sometimes you fall in love and get married. And sometimes you like George a lot, sometimes a little less, sometimes you hate his guts. On Wednesday he's okay. So it's a fluctuating thing. Can you understand that? Nobody is constantly in love with themselves or anyone else. It fluctuates. Sometimes you love a person a little more, a little less. Does that make sense? Anybody got a problem with that? Nobody loves everybody or themselves all the time, unless they're mentally ill. So, if you do away with those things and educate people, like a girl sometimes comes crying to me, she says, my boyfriend left me. And I say to her, did you ever say no to a guy that you don't want to go out with him? She said, well, I guess so. How many times? Oh, I can't remember. So when you reject somebody, you can't think about their feelings, but you just have to understand how they relate to you. And if they don't, you reject them. So it's normal to be rejected or reject people. So if you reject people, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the person you reject. They don't meet your standards. They're different than you are. This guy's a socialist and you're a free enterpriser, you don't like him because he's a socialist. Or whatever it is. But people feel bad when they're rejected. Goddamn female, reject me. They get mad. There's something missing in our education, understanding human behavior. Now, the psychologists in the future would be arrested as criminals because they try to adjust you to the system. How many of you are majoring in psychology here?
I have a bachelor's in psychology. Child development.
Anyone that would try to adjust you to this system has got to be a pinhead. So psychology or psychiatrists don't study human behavior.
No.
They really don't. They go to school, they get their PhD, they come out and they practice psychology. Psychology, for example, they'll say that some people are cold, they just have little feelings or care for other people, they're mentally ill. No, they're not. A lot of them are perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. So I said years ago, Jacque, how can you design a society that works with so many different values, different cultures, different interpretations of love? How can you bring the world together? So I said to myself, that's what thinking is, talking to yourself, nothing mysterious. If I say, I'll see you Saturday at 4 o'clock, he says, just a minute. Saturday, I take the kids to Aunt Minnie's. I can't make it. That's what thinking is, talking to yourself, nothing mysterious. So I said to myself, how the hell are you going to change all these people? Why don't you test it, see if it works? So I joined the Ku Klux Klan in Miami. I attended a lot of their meetings. And then after attending a lot of the meetings, I dissolved it in a month and a half. That group, that particular group, to see if it could be done. Then the next thing I did is I joined the White Citizens Council. They hate foreigners, any foreigners. And I dissolved it in 1 month alone. I'll tell you how it went, okay? So I then asked some people in New York what they consider the most difficult and backward people in the New York area, Brooklyn, New York, Queens. And they said, there's an Arab community in Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn. I'm not attacking the Arabs, but this community group still believe the earth is flat. So I said, boy, Jacque, you got to try that. You got to try to change that. If you can't, you can forget your project. So I called up a guy. I found out who was in charge. I always worked with a guy in charge. His name was Elbaz. And I said, Mr. Elbaz, I'd like to talk to you. First thing he said, are you Arab? That's his dialect. I know all these different dialects well. So I said, that means yes in Arabic. I speak a little bit of many different languages. So he said, from where your father he born? Where was your father born? I said, in Lebanon. He said, very good, come and saw me, come and see me. So I came to see him. He said to me, you believe the world is round? He held his hand up like that. I said, yes. That means it can't be in the Arab world. He felt sorry for me. Then he pointed to his head, which means he's smarter than I am. That's his body language. He held up his head and said, if the world is round, man fall me down here. All the water, he fall me down from the world over here. You understand? The water here, he don't fall me down. But here, all the water, all the people, everything, he fall me down. I was using the best reasoning he had. Obviously, it wasn't. If you use words like gravitational effect, it doesn't get to him at all. So I said, I got to get to Elbaz, otherwise I'd be in a difficult problem. So I brought stuff with me. I anticipated his value system, since I spent a lot of time thinking about different types of people. So I gave him a balloon, and I rubbed it with fur very fast. And I put cornflakes in his hand and told him to hold his hand away from the balloon, underneath it. Does anybody know what happened with the cornflakes? They all attracted to the balloon by static electricity. His jaw hit the pavement. And he said, world he magnet? I said, yes. He went and explained that to all the other Arabs. I didn't have to argue with him. You demonstrate what they don't understand. I took about 5 or 6 of them to an airport. They've never seen an airplane. I just wanted to see how they would react. So Elbaz, being the leader, they all turned to him and they said, Elbaz, why they put the fan in front of the aeroplane as a propeller? He said, they fly up near to the sun, they get hot, so they put the fan in front of the aeroplane. And that was pretty good for a guy with no knowledge about that. But I was curious, how can you know anything unless you're given something? So I began to question, can man really think or invent? What is thinking? Well, it appears to be talking to yourself. What is invention? If a man can't think, can he invent things? So at that time, I was invited to Princeton to speak to the sociology department on my thoughts and experience. I called also the American Psychological Association. I'd like to talk about new ways of getting to people. They said, are you a psychologist? You know, are you a student? No, thanks. They slammed the door. Okay? I just want you to know what happened. I did try to get things out there, but having no credentials makes it difficult. And I did a lot of different things in New York. I should tell you something about them. There's a place called Hell's Kitchen in that area. Crime was very high in that area amongst juveniles. So I went to a juvenile center, juvenile hall, what they call a correctional institute. I said, I'd like to watch the way you treat kids, what you do with juvenile delinquents. So the guy said, are you a student of psychology? And I said, no. He said, I'm sorry. So I said, it's very important for me to see that. He said, yeah, but you have no qualifications. You're not studying psychology. Your dad isn't a psychiatrist. I said, look, the Wright brothers were nothing. They were bicycle mechanics. And the experts used to write books on why men can't fly. We're talking about the establishment. And the Wright brothers never read that book, apparently, so they built a flying machine. And Louis Pasteur was not a doctor, he was a chemist. If people died taking his first, he'd have been executed. But they happened to live. Louis Pasteur was a chemist. And if you go down the line, Alexander Graham Bell was not an electrical engineer. He used to teach the deaf how to speak in front of a flame. Soup! The flame would move. You know, he'd use good method, and he made different devices. Out of that came the telephone. But it was not discovered. He didn't sit down and invent it. I'll tell you later how he did it. But man cannot think of anything new. So when I spoke at the Department of Sociology, I didn't want to speak to the sociology group. I wanted to address everyone in the university. So my title was, Man Can't Think or Reason. That made everyone angry in all the departments. So they didn't come to the sociology department, they came to the auditorium where they held a meeting. So before I even said one word, a guy from the optics department got up and said, that I disagree with you, I take issue with you, I believe man can think and reason. I said, give me one example of man thinking and reasoning. He said, well, it's easy. I said, do it. What is it? He said, well, the camera. There was no camera out there. Somebody had to invent the camera. There's nothing in nature that's going to suggest it. So I said, you're wrong. If you go into a barn any barn anywhere with a knothole in it, where daylight comes in, you'll see cows walking upside down on the wall of the barn. And if anybody doesn't know what I mean, raise your hand.
A pinhole camera.
Yes, that's a pinhole camera. But in the Holy Land, over 1,000 years ago, they made huts, domes out of mud and straw. And there happened to be a hole in one, just a hole accidentally made. And you can see people walking upside down, inside that, and you pay 2 pieces of silver to see the upside down world. No, the guys weren't phonies, they just didn't know what made it occur. That's where the camera came from. So the guy got mad at me. He said, damn it, he said, what about the movie camera? He one upmanship, you know. He tried to set that aside. So I said, in China, over nearly running more than 2,000 years ago, they used to cut out a silhouette of a girl with her hands in this position. I'll draw with that one I saw in the Chinese museum. It was very bad, but it didn't look like a person very much. It was called a dancing girl. It was just a silhouette painted black. And the Chinese made paper out of bamboo, they call bamboo paper. And if you oil it, it's semi-transparent. Now if you put this little girl in front of the bamboo screen about 2-3 inches and light a candle in front of the girl, as the candle flickered, the girl danced. Does anybody understand it? If you light a candle behind this pencil, as it flickers, the shadow will move up and back on the screen. If you put 3 candles, there'll be 3 dancing girls. Do you understand that? Now the Chinese made that, but they also made pamphlets. Let me see if I can. They took bamboo paper and they lined up one sheet behind the other, so they had about 10 pages. I'm just trying to show you what they did, roughly. Then they bind it together. I'm not sure what they used. Then they'd write the Chinese characters up and down. This is ancient China. Then they made a mark in the corner to identify the page that had the information they want. Accidentally, if you happen to flip it fast, the mark in the corner jumps all over the place. Is there anybody not familiar with that? If you made marks in a pad and flipped it, they would jump around. It took about 30 years after that experience for a Chinaman to draw a bird with different successive pictures of the wings in flight. And he drew them in the corner of the book and went, and the bird looked like it was flying. So anybody doesn't understand me? I don't mind repeating it. He then took the wave of the sea and a man walking in different degrees. He drew a man walk, it wasn't very good. And you'd see a guy walking. Another Chinese carpenter took a dowel. He didn't like the flipping of the pages, and he cut slots in the dowel. He had done this for other purposes in the past. He made these dowels with slots in them, and he put all the pictures in the slots, so it looked like a paddle wheel. If you don't understand my drawing, it's a quick drawing of what the pictures were like in the slots. Got it? It looked like a paddle wheel. And if you turn the crank on top of it, you'd see a bird flying or whatever. But it wasn't very good. That is, it looked like a bird was flying. Sometimes it didn't. But if you put your finger there and interrupted it and let the picture pause for just a few seconds so the eye can pick it up, then it worked. So he then put a piece of bamboo there that interrupted the pictures. And that's in the Chinese museum. And if you turn the crank, you see a man walking, waves moving, or a guy pulling a push carriage, with a person in it, the things of China. And the Frenchman saw that in the Chinese museum and machined it out of brass. Beautiful job. You turn the crank and he put more pictures in, photographs. And that was great. Edison saw that and bought it from the Frenchman. And Edison made a gadget that looked like a pencil sharpener, big pencil sharpener. And it had a view thing built into the pencil that looked like a big pencil sharpener. Tried drawing it looked like, and it was called a Nickelodeon. You put a nickel in, turned the crank, and those pictures went by the paddle wheel. It looked like this with a viewer up here. You put a nickel in a slot. I don't know if any of you lived to see that. In the old days, they were around all over the place. Did anybody ever see these things?
Well, these have been just like reproductions.
Yes, reproduction of it. All right. So no one sat down and invented a movie camera. It's so developed serially, so slowly, bit by bit, that you think, my God, what a wonderful mind. But we're in touch with universal knowledge that comes to the mind. That's where all this bullshit about telepathy and all that stuff. And some scientists called New Frontiers of the Mind are trying to investigate telepathy. So I was at a psychological meeting once where they said, we're going to check out telepathy, see if it's real. I said, how do you know how to check it out? You'd have to read every gimmick used to manifest that. They said, well, you be in charge of that. I said, no. This is why I went there. I just want to tell them that they're not capable of checking it out. Like man, if he can't understand where all this comes from, he invents God. Somebody had to make it. It was like my kid saying, Daddy, what makes an airplane fly? Is it the propeller? I said, if the engine doesn't turn the propeller, it won't move. Is it the engine? No, if you don't put fuel in that engine, it won't operate. Then is it the fuel? No, without oxygen, that fuel won't combust. Or a spark plug. So he said, what makes it fly? It's many interacting systems. Just like doctors years ago used to were looking for the cause of cancer. Like there's a cause. There's many interacting variables. So medicine does not equip to study cancer. You need doctors, biologists, physicists, and electrical engineers. The body is an electrical, chemical machine that operates according to certain laws. And the answer does not lie within medicine. So you don't even have doctors that know how to think about the subject. I try to talk to different groups. Having no credentials, I have a difficult. But now we're invited all over the world to speak at universities all over the world. I want you to know what's happening with the Venus Project. Magazines all over the world are doing articles. We got an inquiry from a magazine called The Irish Entrepreneur. And they said, would you do an article on the Venus Project? I said, let's see the magazine. The magazine's a business magazine, all about money. I said, you wouldn't like it? It's criticizing the monetary system. They said, well, we'll run it anyway. I said, you promised not to change a word. They said they did, and they ran it, and they didn't change a word. It's redesigning the world, Irish Entrepreneur, about over a year ago. And they ran it straight. And we got letters from the Weekly Reader. Do you know that children's magazine that goes to the Weekly Reader? They said, would you do an article on the Venus Project for the level of children? You may get letters from 10 teachers. We got a letter from 1,000 children and teachers. They want to know what the Venus Project is more about. And they had kids making models of the Venus Project. Then the kids said, can we come and live out here in Venus Project? Will you send us tickets? We want to come and live in that kind of system. It was amazing, the reaction we got. When we went to Turkey, they gave us an hour and a half, and they set up a Venus Project course. They printed our book in Turkish right away. Then they said, we'd like to build a Venus Project. That's before the collapse, the economic. They wanted to send the students from the universities out here to learn how to think about things. It never came off because the depression hit, and things are very bad out there. But there are people out there trying to work out the problems. So I'm just telling you what's happening. All those magazines are from France, Germany, all over the world. Turkey on the Venus Project. Pictures of our project, what we want to do. No attitude against it. When we got to Turkey, CNN, all the broadcasting, I mean, spent long days with us shooting this discussion that I'm having with you. Without this discussion, without film, it's not possible. So, I mean, really, you can't get to most people without it. So everybody didn't understand this, that no one invented anything anyway. what happened is somebody in the audience at Princeton said, how about Tesla? He had a fine mind and he made
How about what? Can you repeat?
wireless
Tesla.
communication.
Nikola Tesla.
Wireless communication without wires. Where did that come from? So I said to him, when I was a kid, don't forget I'm 93, when I was a kid there were stores called electrical stores, and you bought electrical wiring and stuff, those stores. But sometimes they rolled the wire on a cardboard cylinder. That's how they sold the wire. They rolled it on the cylinder, and they got the cylinders from the carpet company. Carpets come on a cardboard cylinder. And they rolled it on a cylinder because they don't want to push the wire in a bag, see. So they rolled it on a cylinder. Sometimes the wire was broken. So people connected two electrodes, two chip clamps to it, and a small battery and a galvanometer to see if the wire was broken. And if you happen to buy fine wire, they wrap it around a smaller unit. And the guy who packaged it shoved the small unit in the big unit. And when you tested the outside, it induced a current on the inside board, even though it wasn't connected. That's where Tesla got it from. He didn't sit down and say, gotta make a wireless. And then they tell you in school, they tell you that somebody invented the wheel. And that was the beginning of the technical age. That's another bullshit thing. I'm dealing with probability now. Probably a tree fell over another tree and a guy pulled it and it rolled. That's probably where it was suggested from. If everybody doesn't understand what I'm saying, if a tree falls over another tree and you pull it, it rolls. But if there's a stone in the way, it'll stop the thing from rolling. So they shaved off the bark in the mid-region. And if you keep shaving off bark, you get two wheels on the end. That's what it happens. So, what is creativity? Creativity is taking known elements and putting them together in unique ways.
And isn't that what thinking is, though?
Yes.
And isn't that absolutely
Nothing
crucial
magic.
for our future?
Yes.
So these physical inventions come from observations, but scientific theory is creativity, it is new inventions,
Yes.
it is essential
Yes.
for this
Yes.
world going
That's
forward.
why our language is so old, it has to be updated and more scientific terminology. That's why semantics, the book, have you ever read much of it? Semantics is very useful to read books like Tyranny of Words, Mind in the Making, or
Linguistics, all of that. That's
Yeah. Which includes all of that. So, putting it another way, let's say we go back to the days of the caveman. The caveman sitting in a cave, here's a cave, and this is a man sitting in a cave, or a woman. You see that drawing? A man sitting in a cave. In order to climb a hill, if you step on a severe incline, you'll slip. If you step on a flat, slightly flat, you'll get up. So when you climb a hill, you look for slight flats. Is anybody clear? After this guy lives there 10 years, it gets to look like that. He doesn't say, I gotta make steps to get up to the cave. Can't. It occurs as he walks up the hill. Time and time again, he steps on the flat areas and it changes. Then when he moves from this cave, he brings that knowledge with him, called associative memory. So if you're walking down the street at night and 3 black men are coming, they beat you up. The next time she sees 3 black, she crosses the street. That's associative memory. Or if they're Filipinos, or Greeks, or Italians, or so
All men.
you got all these different kinds of people that look different. When I was a kid, there weren't too many Chinese around, except in the laundry. So we used to run down and look at them, you know. And the black guy was right in my neighborhood, because they lived in quarters. And we used to run down the street and look at them, because they looked so different. We didn't know anything about them. People said, well, they don't want to play with those black kids, or the green kids, or whatever you had. So you had the parents fucking up the kids real bad. You're a Lutheran, you don't play with that little Catholic girl. So parents do a lot of damage, not because they're bad. Nobody is good or bad. Everybody is perfectly well adjusted where they're coming from. Brother, if you don't get there and take it first, be nothing left for you. Kids are brought up with different, and psychologists think they're self-centered. They invent words, psychopathic. They invent all kinds of phony words, not considering the environment. The environment makes bigots, prejudice, Turks. The difference between a Turk, the difference between a creative, productive person and a lazy person is environment. So you work on the environment, get rid of the environment that makes that. Have you ever heard of Jeffrey Dahmer? How many people have? How many people have heard of Albert Fish? That goes way back. They believe he ate 45 children. The public wanted to tear him to pieces. There's a psychiatrist named Wortham, rare individual, said, don't kill him. I want to try to find out what made him that way. Well, he wasn't very good at that. He didn't find out everything. But this is what he did find out. When the kid was about 8 years old, he was touching his private parts. His mother was an old-time Baptist. Came in, he had no attitude about it. My mother looked at him and said, you're going to burn in hell touching that part of your body. That's evil, sexual, satanic. And kept on the kid, you burn eternally touching that part of your body. You want to go to hell and burn there? Well, the kid was shaking like mad. Mother said at 2 in the morning he was screaming. So she went into his bedroom, he stuck needles in his genitals, didn't want to go to hell. But he used to take minority kids into the woods and try to cut their genitals off. He was brought up in a distorted environment. And there's nothing wrong with him mentally. They think he belongs to psychiatric ward. No, there's a lot of people that are fucked up by the values of their culture. Only when the brain disorder is physical, high temperature, I'm talking about last stages of syphilis, there are many brain disorders, physical damage, that's different. But the difference, it's hard to tell the difference when you talk to a member of the clan between brain disorders and value system distortion. Do you know what I mean?
How do you explain the difference between a child who takes that from his mother and sticks needles in his genitals that night, and another child who takes that from his mother and is like, I'm just going to chill like this and do everything she says from now on?
I got the same thing from 2 priests who used to come to my seminars, and they said, I know 2 people from the identical environment. One turned out a priest, another a gangster. If environment's everything, how do you get those differences? The minute you pick up the younger kid and start playing with it, and the 7-year-olds say that with that lip out, while you're playing with this kid, you're making jealousy and envy. Then I notice when the little kid falls down the steps, the old kid has white wrist. Is he bad? No. You made him that way by not knowing enough about children. You take the young kid, put him on, take the older kid, put him on, this is your baby brother. You never play with one kid or say, why can't you be like your brother? Or why can't you be like your sister? That's where the parents fuck up the kids. They have to go to school to learn how to raise children in the future. I want to tell you a little bit about children. I wanted to communicate with my boy when he was about 3 months old. Well, that's before communication. But I want to communicate with any system whatsoever that produces desired behavior. It's not language first. Communication. Communication is any system. A person can say to you, it was nice having you come again. They don't want to see you. You're reading something else. It's any method. If you slap a kid and he stops doing something, he communicates with his fist. Another guy, he speaks to you. If you don't understand, he gets louder. If you still don't get it, he makes a fist. Punch you. I said America is the greatest country on earth. You disagree with it, he'll punch you. That's a reaction to those words. He's not. No one acts automatically. No one has free will. Oh, that's another bullshit word. That we can make choices. We can't. Depends on where we're brought up. If you ask an Eskimo, you can have anything in the world, what do you want? He doesn't say a stainless steel refrigerator. He doesn't have his vocabulary. Yeah. An Eskimo never dreams of walking on a palm-fringed beach unless he's seen a movie, you understand, or books or pictures. So we can't escape our culture. No one is open-minded. You can't be open-minded. You can be more flexible than others, but you can't be open-minded because you have a language and a way of thinking superimposed upon you by your culture. So when I was a kid, I probably made more mistakes than anyone I know because I tried more things. So no one, I want to say this clearly if I can, no one ever makes a mistake in their life. They do with what they know. No, the first guy that fooled with nitric acid and glycerin, he disappeared in the building. His brother-in-law wrote, never play. There was a guy in France that built a set of wings that extended 3 feet on each side, and he knew he could fly with those. So he jumped off the Eiffel Tower, and he died. And his brother-in-law wrote, make wings larger next time.